There were some big earnings announcements this week. We had Apple, Microsoft, Chevron, and others. Also, the Fed chairman gave a speech this week, which probably caused a little turmoil in the markets. If you want to see how all of that impacted my portfolio, stay tuned. Hey guys, Kevin Burgess back again with yet another video. This week, we're going to be looking at my portfolio and how all of the events of this week impacted that portfolio. So I had someone ask me for the list of items in my portfolio. So I'm going to put that at the end of the video. So if you want to see in detail all the investments I have, hang on to the end of the video and you will see the entire portfolio. If you're new to this channel is about personal freedom. We seek personal freedom through passive income so that we can do what we want to do when we want to do it. This video today is going to be reviewing the portfolio and what has happened from a portfolio perspective. I think you'll find it very interesting. We had some big names issue earnings this week, so there was a lot of turmoil in the market. The Fed obviously caused some turmoil. Some days were up, some days were down, and actually sometimes within the day it was way up and way down. Pretty similar to last week, but yet a little more volatile. So I am not a financial advisor. I am just giving you the opportunity to walk this journey with me as I seek personal freedom. So you're going to be able to see all of my investments, and I'm even going to talk about some of the rationale behind why I do what I do. But at the end of the day, you're in charge of your portfolio. You have to make those decisions. This is just for your entertainment purposes and hopefully a bit of education so that you can take that and apply it to your portfolio. So with that, let's get started. The dividend portfolio update for January the 28th, the week ending January 28th. For those who may be new to the channel, just a reminder, I have a dividend portfolio that I separate between a dividend growth portfolio and a dividend yield portfolio. In the dividend growth portfolio, I look for stocks who are raising their dividends hopefully quickly. That's what that account is for. I will also use that account for any stocks that I believe are deeply, deeply discounted, and I'm looking for some capital appreciation from them. In the dividend yield portfolio, I'm looking for stocks who are solid and secure, that are raising their dividends every year, but they give a higher yield. That is the portfolio that I will actually use for expenses if I need it, in addition to the other passive incomes that I have. So this is the combination of both of those portfolios, the dividend yield portfolio and the dividend growth portfolio. I had 3 dividend increases this week. Hess Midstream announced a 1.2% increase on January the 24th. Chevron comes out with a 6% increase on January the 26th. And Comcast comes out with an 8% increase on January the 27th. So the beautiful thing about that is I got a raise this week and all I did was hold the shares. It is really a great thing. So let's take a look at the portfolio update here. We have a portfolio balance of $772,188.44. That is up this week by about $10,000. So after all of the craziness of the week, we actually ended up higher. We got dividends of $284.56 this week, and we'll go through those in a few minutes. But you can see most all of the change from this week came from the market. So we had an interestingly, and I don't know if we'll ever see this again, both the yield portfolio and the growth portfolio went up 1.3%. So that means in total, we also went up 1.3%. Not a bad week. So on a year-to-date basis, we've gotten $1,000 worth of dividends. We've put funding in of $7,800, and the market change year-to-date is $6,209.70. However, this week, with 1.3% change in the portfolio value, we are up 0.8% on the year. So that's exciting to see. One of the things we like to do is compare our performance with the S&P 500. The S&P 500 this week closed at 4431.85. You can see that in this chart, this is a 1-month chart. This chart shows the S&P falling, and so it continued to fall last week. On the next chart, you can see the performance. The blue line is our dividend portfolio, and the yellow or orange line is the S&P 500. You can see that on the blue line, we went up 1.3%, which we've already discussed. The S&P 500 went up 0.8%, and on a cumulative basis through the end of January or through January 28th, the S&P is down 7%, while the dividend portfolio is up 0.8%. So that's a 7.8% swing. Not too bad. In the yield portfolio, I not only did some sales, but I also did some purchases. And I'll talk about that for just a second. I had 4 stocks that I had bought early on in the process. And while they were good stocks, they were not stocks that I wanted to add positions to. I didn't have a lot of passion behind them. And so therefore, they just sat there as very small pieces of my portfolio. As I've been walking through these analyses that I've been doing, I got to looking at this fact that I had 40 stocks in my portfolio, and to do 40 of those videos, that was going to be a lot. So I thought, one of the ways I can help that is to reduce the number of stocks that I have. So I got rid of the 4 stocks that I don't have passion around. Those stocks were Consolidated Edison. I sold all 32 shares. General Mills, I sold all 40 shares. Community Trust Bancorp, I sold all 75 shares, and Kimberly-Clark, I sold 10 shares, all 10 shares. So that meant I had money in my yield portfolio that I wanted to go ahead and put to work. So just so happens that I sold these 4 stocks in a high point in the market, and I don't time the market. I'm not good at timing the market. I never have timed the market very well, but this particular week, I did okay. I sold the stocks when it was high, and I bought some additional stocks when it was under a little bit of pressure. So that worked out pretty well. So I bought 70 shares of Main Street Capital, 20 shares of Pinnacle West, 10 shares of Chevron, 75 shares of Kinder Morgan, 25 shares of Verizon, 10 shares of Prudential, and 10 shares of IBM. I basically have taken the higher yield stocks that I have, and I split the investment up between those. The next slide here shows the dividends that I received in the yield portfolio, and there were none. But I will point out that we have $9,174 of annual dividend income. So if you divide that by 12, you get about $765 per month. That's not too shabby. But before I did these transactions this week, selling the 4 stocks and buying the higher yield stocks, we were about a little under $740 per week. So by doing what I did this week, I actually got a raise of $25 per week in my dividend portfolio. Can't complain about that. So just an update on the call that I did last week. As you recall, I sold 1 contract of Campbell's Soup with a $47 strike price for $99.32. So I got the income of $99.32. Now I need to, at some point, close this position or let it expire unexercised or exercised, either way. So the current value of this contract is $80. That means that my potential gain is about $19.32, and that would be if I close the position this past Friday. I'm going to hold on to it for a while. Let's let some time go by, and hopefully this will go down to something much, much smaller. The cash left to invest in this yield account is $67, so I did a pretty good job of putting the money to work this week. The growth portfolio, I actually increased 2 positions this week. I bought 30 shares of Whirlpool and 25 shares of Microsoft. I felt that those were really good purchases. Microsoft was down going into the earnings, so I bought some of that. Whirlpool took a dive later in the week, and so I bought some additional shares of that. My opinion, it's still very fairly valued, so that's something that we may even take a look at next week as well. I didn't sell any shares in this portfolio, and the cash left to invest now is $19,252. If you recall last week, I had somewhere in the $32,000, $32,500 range. So I did put some more money to work this week. I got 2 dividends in the growth portfolio this week. That's kind of exciting. We talked last week that the way my portfolio is structured, I get very few dividends in January. You can see that even in this growth portfolio, I get few. I only get a few in January and February. But we got Comcast, $132.89 on the 26th of January, and we got EOG Resources, $151.67 on January the 28th. So that's exciting that we're getting some dividends in this account. You will notice that March is going to be a huge month from a dividend perspective. I should get somewhere in the $2,500 range for dividends. So we'll be talking a lot about dividends each week in the month of March. So this week, the portfolio performed very well. I mean, being up 1.3% with the S&P 500 up 0.8%. In the midst of all of the earnings calls, the downs, the highs, I think we did pretty well. So dividend portfolio for me is like riding a big boat in some rough waters. The big boat doesn't get tossed around like the little boats do. And so I think it's a much smoother ride. It's not a smooth ride, but it's a much smoother ride. That's it for the portfolio update. I will share now with you my portfolio. So I've put some slides together here that show all of the positions in my portfolio. I'm not going to read these, but I will let them kind of cycle through. And if you want to pause the video and look at them, you're certainly welcome to do that. I'll just talk about a couple of them on each slide. So we've got my top investment, and these are sorted by descending order of the percentage of my portfolio. So my top investment is Cummins Inc., and it's done actually... It had been doing very well. This week it came down a lot. And so if you're interested in a good industrial that has a foot in the old world and a foot in the new world, I think this is a great stock. Lockheed Martin, has been doing very well. We're up 14% on it. Pinnacle West is up 5.6%, so that's good. So Whirlpool, as you can see, they had a rough week. They're down 4%. The biggest pain in my side or thorn in my flesh is Comcast, and that's going to be my next video, so you won't want to miss that. I probably won't hold any punches on that. So on the next slide, you'll see EOG Resources at the top. This has actually been quite the stock. I bought it about 8 weeks ago, and it is up 30%. And you can see that their dividend growth is about 17%. It's performed very well. I did not anticipate them going up that much that quickly. So, fortunately, I got in with some investment in the portfolio. You can see some other ones here. Atmos Energy is doing very well also. And Chevron is actually, performing well for me. So moving on to the next slide, we have one of my favorite stocks, which is Hess Midstream. It's been a stock that I've used in my yield portfolio for quite some time. It's up about 15%, and it yields. My yield on cost is, somewhere in the 8% range. I think now the yield is around 6 or 6.5, but it's performed very well for me. And then one of my favorite stories is Lowe's. I was at the eye doctor, and this was a couple of quarters ago. Home Depot had issued their earnings and had their earnings call, and it was pretty gloom. And both Home Depot and Lowe's just really tanked. And so Lowe's is, my preference between Lowe's and Home Depot. So I ended up buying Lowe's at like $183 a share. And the next day it went up, and it has not really stopped since. It was up around 250 at one point. It looks like it's down to about 235 now. But I have some shares at great prices, so I'm just gonna hold on to that and see what happens to it. So the last page starts out with Tyson. Tyson has performed well for me, about 15%. You can see AbbVie is up 25%. Merck is up 7% or 9.7%. New Jersey Resources has actually turned positive. I actually intended to buy some more of that while it was down, but I chose not to buy it yesterday because it had come back. But I do believe it's a good stock. I do want to buy it on the dips, though. And then lastly, you'll see Apple, those poor little 10 shares of Apple. So hopefully I'll get to add some more to that portfolio. We will see. I should have added more last week, but just did not pull the trigger. And so we'll see what happens. So that's my portfolio. Those are the items that are in it. Just to refresh, the balance in the portfolio is $772,000. The yield portfolio is $184,781.79, and the growth portfolio is $587,406.65. So the dividends that I receive in the yield account, I will use them if I need them, but if I don't need them, I reinvest them. And in the growth account, it's set up on a drip plan, so every dividend that comes in buys the same stock that issued the dividend. So we had a good week. In the midst of all the turmoil, we had a really good week. I'm very pleased with the performance of the portfolio, and looking forward to what the next week holds. So in the meantime, learn all that you can, stay invested, and I will see you on the next video.